Part 1. Now then, let me tell you about an afternoon in 16th century Kyoto, when the world moved to the gentle rhythm of bamboo and silk, and the most pressing aesthetic controversy a man might face involved determining whether a particular shade of pink was sufficiently subtle for a respectable parasol, or whether it was so boldly colored that it threatened to upset the delicate harmony that governed all proper umbrella design. This was Japan during the refined elegance of the Muromachi period, when the creation of a single parasol required the sort of patient attention to detail that would make even tea ceremony masters nod approvingly, and when the difference between acceptable craftsmanship and true artistry lay in subtleties so fine that only masters and their most dedicated students could perceive them. The afternoon's sun filtered through the wooden lattice windows of the workshop with the sort of diffused gentleness that suggested it understood its role in illuminating delicate work without creating harsh shadows that might interfere with the precise evaluation of color relationships and silk quality. In a narrow building that nestled among its neighbors like a quiet meditation between busier thoughts, Master Takeshi the umbrella maker was continuing his lifelong conversation with bamboo, silk, and the eternal mystery of how to create objects that provided both practical protection from weather and aesthetic pleasure that could elevate an ordinary day into something approaching poetry. His workshop occupied 2 floors of a traditional wooden structure, with the ground level devoted to the actual craft work and the upper floor serving as both storage area and meditation space where finished parasols waited in patient rows like colorful prayers awaiting divine attention. Now, if you're enjoying our stories, please give us a like and subscribe to support our channel and help us make it even better. After all, there are still 3 more parts of this wonderfully contemplative afternoon waiting to unfold, and we'd love to share them with you. The workshop itself was a masterpiece of Japanese functional design, where every tool had its designated place and every surface served multiple purposes with the sort of elegant efficiency that made complex work appear effortlessly simple. Low wooden tables provided work surfaces at the proper height for seated craftsmanship, while bamboo poles of various lengths hung from ceiling hooks in carefully organized arrangements that reflected both practical accessibility and visual harmony. The tools were beautiful in their simplicity: sharp knives for cutting silk, delicate brushes for applying patterns, wooden forms for shaping bamboo ribs, and countless small implements that had been refined over generations of umbrella making to achieve the perfect balance between functionality and grace. But it was the silk itself that truly defined the character of the workshop. Bolts of fabric in every conceivable color and pattern were arranged on shelves that lined the walls like a library of textile possibilities, each piece representing hours of careful dyeing and weaving by craftsmen who understood that umbrella silk had to meet standards different from ordinary fabric. The material needed to be strong enough to withstand wind and rain, flexible enough to fold and unfold countless times, and beautiful enough to serve as a moving work of art that enhanced rather than diminished the appearance of whoever carried it. Among all these carefully organized materials and tools, a young woman named Yuki was pursuing her apprenticeship in the ancient art of parasol creation with the sort of dedicated concentration that had made her grandfather proud and occasionally exasperated in equal measure. Yuki possessed what might diplomatically be called strong opinions about color relationships and pattern arrangements, opinions that sometimes conflicted with traditional approaches to umbrella design in ways that created interesting philosophical discussions about the balance between innovation and respect for established methods. Master Takeshi himself was a man whose appearance reflected decades of intimate relationship with delicate craftsmanship. His hands showed the particular calluses that came from handling bamboo and silk, his posture had adapted to the requirements of precise close work, and his eyes had developed the sort of focused attention that could detect flaws invisible to casual observers. He wore the traditional working clothes of Japanese craftsmen, simple cotton garments that could withstand the occasional splash of dye or paste while maintaining the dignity appropriate to serious artistic work. The afternoon's project involved the creation of a set of parasols commissioned for a merchant family's daughter, work that required not only technical excellence but careful attention to the social implications of color choices and pattern selections. The parasols would be used in public settings where they would reflect on both the family's taste and Master Takeshi's reputation, making every design decision a matter of both aesthetic and commercial importance. Grandfather, Yuki said carefully, using the tone that indicated she was about to raise a potentially controversial topic. I've been considering the pink silk for the primary parasol, but I wonder if we might explore a slightly more vibrant shade than traditional practice would suggest. This sort of diplomatic challenge to established methods was typical of Yuki's approach to learning the craft, respectful but persistent questioning that demonstrated genuine engagement with the artistic principles while also suggesting possible improvements or innovations. Master Takeshi had learned to appreciate these discussions, even when they complicated what might otherwise have been straightforward design decisions. "Show me this pink that concerns you," Master Takeshi replied, settling into the sort of patient attention that serious artistic consultation required. His tone carried no judgment, only the genuine interest of a craftsman who understood that color evaluation required collaborative consideration rather than arbitrary pronouncement. Yuki carefully selected a bolt of silk from the shelf, unrolling enough fabric to demonstrate its color characteristics under the workshop's natural lighting. The pink was indeed more vibrant than traditional parasol design typically employed, not aggressively bright, but possessing a warmth and intensity that would certainly attract attention and might be considered bold by conservative standards. "It's beautiful silk," Master Takeshi observed thoughtfully, examining the fabric with the sort of systematic attention that professional evaluation required. "The color has remarkable depth, and the weave quality is excellent. However, we must consider whether such boldness aligns with the social context in which these parasols will be used." This sort of careful analysis of the relationship between artistic choices and social appropriateness was fundamental to Japanese craftsmanship, where successful design required understanding not just aesthetic principles but the cultural context within which finished objects would exist. A parasol that was perfectly beautiful in isolation might be inappropriate for its intended user if it conflicted with social expectations or family status. The workshop had filled with the warm, golden light of late afternoon, creating exactly the sort of illumination that made color evaluation both pleasant and accurate. The natural lighting revealed subtleties in the silk that artificial illumination might miss, while also creating the sort of peaceful atmosphere that encouraged thoughtful contemplation of complex design decisions. From the upper floor came the soft sound of the tea kettle beginning to whisper, its gentle music providing the sort of rhythmic background that enhanced rather than distracted from concentrated work. The tea preparation was timed to coincide with the afternoon's natural break period, when both master and student would pause their active work to engage in the sort of reflective discussion that was essential for transmitting not just technical knowledge but the philosophical understanding that separated true craftsmanship from mere mechanical skill. "Perhaps," Yuki suggested carefully, "we could incorporate the vibrant pink as an accent color rather than the primary shade, using it for interior details or pattern elements that would provide visual interest without overwhelming the overall design harmony." This sort of creative compromise was exactly what Master Takeshi hoped to see from advanced students, the ability to balance artistic vision with practical constraints while finding solutions that honored both innovation and tradition. Yuki's suggestion demonstrated understanding of design principles while also showing respect for the social context within which their work would be evaluated. The afternoon light continued to shift gradually across the workshop, creating subtle changes in how the silk colors appeared under different illumination conditions. This natural variation reminded both craftsmen that parasol design had to account for the various lighting situations in which the finished objects would be used, from bright outdoor sunlight to the softer illumination of indoor settings. Master Takeshi began the careful process of selecting bamboo ribs for the parasol frame, examining each piece for the proper combination of strength, flexibility, and visual appeal that successful umbrella construction required. The bamboo came from specific groves known for producing material with ideal characteristics, and each piece had been aged and prepared according to traditional methods that enhanced its structural properties while preserving its natural beauty. "The frame construction will influence our color decisions," he explained to Yuki as he worked through the bamboo selection process. "Darker wood will provide stronger contrast for light colors, while lighter bamboo allows more subtle color relationships to develop. The choice affects not just appearance but the overall harmony of the finished parasol." This sort of systematic consideration of how different design elements influenced each other was fundamental to Japanese craftsmanship, where successful objects achieve their excellence through careful attention to the relationships between all their components rather than through the isolated perfection of individual elements. The tea kettle's whisper had grown more insistent, indicating that the water was approaching optimal temperature for the afternoon tea ceremony that marked the workshop's traditional rest period. This daily ritual provided not just refreshment but an opportunity for reflection and discussion that was essential for maintaining the sort of contemplative state that produced the finest work. As Master Takeshi completed his preliminary bamboo selection and Yuki continued her thoughtful examination of color possibilities, both craftsmen felt the satisfaction that came from engaging in work that required not just technical skill but genuine artistic sensitivity. The parasol project was proceeding according to the unhurried schedule that allowed proper attention to every detail while maintaining the sort of peaceful rhythm that made even challenging work feel like meditation. The workshop continued its gentle afternoon progression, with tools and materials waiting patiently for the decisions that would transform them into objects of both beauty and utility, while the soft sounds of tea preparation reminded master and student that the day's most important accomplishments might come not from the speed of their work but from the depth of their attention to the ancient principles that govern the creation of truly excellent parasols. And so our Japanese afternoon unfolds in the gentle rhythm of silk and bamboo, where the greatest controversy lies in the boldness of pink and wisdom comes through patient consideration of color relationships and the eternal harmony between innovation and tradition. Part 2. The tea kettle's gentle song had reached that perfect pitch that indicated the water was ready for the afternoon ceremony, its voice joining the soft afternoon symphony of settling wood, rustling silk, and the almost imperceptible sounds of bamboo adjusting to the day's warmth. Master Takeshi set aside his bamboo selection with the sort of deliberate care that marked the transition from active work to contemplative pause, understanding that the tea ceremony served not merely as refreshment but as an essential rhythm that allowed the mind to process and integrate the afternoon's artistic decisions. Yuki followed her grandfather's lead, carefully arranging her silk samples according to the workshop's traditional protocols for work suspension. Each material was positioned to avoid creasing or exposure to direct sunlight, while tools were cleaned and returned to their designated places with the sort of mindful attention that demonstrated respect for the implements that made their craft possible. This daily ritual of workspace organization was as important as the tea ceremony itself, creating the mental clarity necessary for meaningful artistic reflection. The upper floor of the workshop served as both storage area and tea room, its tatami mats worn smooth by decades of daily ceremonies that had marked the rhythm of countless afternoons spent in contemplation of parasol design and construction. The space was arranged with typical Japanese elegance, minimal but perfect, where every object served both functional and aesthetic purposes while contributing to an overall harmony that enhanced rather than distracted from the ceremony's contemplative goals. Master Takeshi began the tea preparation with movements that had become second nature through years of daily practice, each gesture flowing into the next with the sort of effortless precision that characterized all aspects of his craftsmanship. The tea ceremony in a craftsman's workshop differed from formal presentations in its emphasis on practical mindfulness rather than elaborate protocol, focusing on the meditative aspects that enhanced creative thinking rather than the social elements that marked more formal occasions. The pink silk raises interesting questions about the relationship between individual preference and social harmony, Master Takeshi observed as he warmed the tea bowls, introducing the afternoon's philosophical discussion with the sort of gentle directness that encouraged thoughtful response rather than defensive reaction. This approach to artistic education was typical of Japanese master-student relationships, where technical instruction was inseparable from broader considerations about the role of craftsmanship in society and the responsibilities that came with the ability to create objects that would influence the daily lives of others. Yuki considered this observation while arranging herself in the proper position for tea reception, understanding that her response would contribute to her ongoing education in the philosophical dimensions of umbrella making. Perhaps, she said carefully, the question is not whether the pink is too bold, but whether boldness itself can serve appropriate purposes when properly integrated into overall design harmony. This sort of thoughtful reframing of design challenges was exactly what Master Takeshi hoped to cultivate in advanced students, the ability to look beyond surface considerations to underlying principles while maintaining respect for traditional wisdom. Yuki's response demonstrated growing sophistication in balancing innovation with established methods. The tea preparation continued with the sort of unhurried attention that allowed both participants to settle into the contemplative state that enhanced creative problem-solving. The warm, earthy aroma of the tea created exactly the sort of sensory environment that encouraged reflection, while the ritual movements provided a meditative focus that quieted the mind's tendency toward distraction. Consider the merchant's daughter who will carry these parasols, Master Takeshi suggested as he poured the tea with practiced grace. What message does she wish to convey through her choice of umbrella? Is she seeking to demonstrate conventional propriety? Or does she perhaps desire to suggest a more independent spirit while remaining within acceptable social boundaries? This sort of user-centered design thinking was fundamental to Japanese craftsmanship, where successful objects had to serve not only practical functions but social and psychological needs that varied depending on the specific circumstances of their use. Understanding the client's unstated objectives was often more important than following established aesthetic rules. Yuki accepted her tea with appropriate gratitude, using the moment of first tasting to consider her response to this complex question. The tea was perfectly prepared, neither too strong nor too weak, with exactly the right temperature to provide warmth without scalding, and its subtle flavor enhanced rather than distracted from the afternoon's artistic deliberations. If the merchant family has commissioned multiple parasols, she observed thoughtfully, perhaps we could create a collection that offers different options for different occasions. The vibrant pink might be appropriate for private garden parties or informal visits, while more traditional colors would serve for formal social events. This sort of comprehensive design solution demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking that Master Takeshi sought to encourage, understanding that clients often needed versatility rather than single-purpose objects, and that successful craftsmanship involved anticipating needs that customers might not explicitly articulate. The afternoon light had continued its gradual progression across the tea room, creating subtle changes in the atmosphere that reminded both craftsmen of the passage of time and the importance of making decisions that would allow productive work to continue. The tea ceremony provided essential reflection time, but the parasol project required completion according to deadlines that respected both quality standards and customer expectations. The silk quality supports multiple approaches, Master Takeshi noted, examining the pink fabric sample in the tea room's natural lighting. The weave is tight enough to hold vibrant colors without appearing garish, and the texture has sufficient depth to create interesting interactions with natural light throughout the day. This sort of technical analysis was fundamental to making informed design decisions, as the success of any color choice depended not just on initial appearance but on how the fabric would look under various lighting conditions and how it would age with use and exposure to weather. The tea ceremony had reached that perfect moment when the mind achieved optimal clarity for complex decision-making, neither rushed by time pressure nor dulled by excessive relaxation. This was the state that Japanese craftsmen sought for their most important artistic choices, alert but calm, focused but open to unexpected insights that might emerge from careful consideration of all relevant factors. I believe, Yuki said after completing her contemplation of the design challenges, that we should create sample combinations using the vibrant pink in different proportions and contexts. This will allow us to evaluate how the color interacts with various traditional elements before committing to a final design approach. This sort of systematic exploration was exactly the methodology that produced excellent results in Japanese craftsmanship, thorough testing of possibilities rather than relying on theoretical assumptions or past experience that might not apply to current circumstances. Master Takeshi nodded approvingly at this suggestion, recognizing that Yuki was demonstrating the sort of mature design thinking that indicated her apprenticeship was progressing toward genuine mastery. The ability to propose testing procedures showed understanding that even experienced craftsmen needed to verify their assumptions when working with new materials or unconventional approaches. The tea ceremony concluded with the sort of natural transition that marked successful contemplative sessions. Decisions clarified, understanding deepened, and energy restored for the afternoon's remaining work. Both master and student felt the satisfaction that came from using reflection time productively while maintaining the peaceful state of mind that enhanced rather than hindered creative work. As they prepared to return to the workshop, Master Takeshi gathered the silk samples that would be needed for the testing process, while Yuki organized the tools required for creating small-scale prototypes that would demonstrate various color relationships without committing significant materials to experimental approaches. The descent to the workshop level felt like a gentle transition from contemplation to action, with the afternoon's philosophical insights ready to be translated into practical artistic decisions. The workspace waited exactly as they had left it, with tools and materials arranged for immediate resumption of productive activity. The bamboo selection that Master Takeshi had begun before the tea ceremony now appeared in a new light, informed by their discussion of client needs and design possibilities. Each piece could be evaluated not just for structural properties but for how it would interact with the various color schemes they planned to test. "We'll begin with small samples," Master Takeshi announced, settling back into his working position with renewed focus. The pink silk combined with traditional patterns, then with simplified designs that allow the color itself to provide the primary visual interest. This systematic approach to testing represented the sort of methodical craftsmanship that characterized the finest Japanese artisans, thorough exploration of possibilities combined with careful documentation of results that would inform future projects as well as current decisions. Yuki arranged her workspace for the sample creation process, laying out the various silk options alongside the tools needed for cutting, folding, and temporarily assembling test combinations. The work required precision but not permanence, allowing for experimentation without the pressure that came with creating final products. The afternoon light continued to provide optimal conditions for color evaluation, streaming through the lattice windows with the sort of consistent illumination that revealed true color relationships rather than the distortions that could result from artificial lighting or dramatic shadows. As both craftsmen began the careful work of creating test samples, they felt the satisfaction that came from translating philosophical insights into practical action. The tea ceremony had provided the clarity needed for intelligent decision-making, while the testing process would provide the evidence needed for confident implementation of whatever approach proved most successful. The workshop settled back into its productive rhythm, with the soft sounds of careful cutting and folding joining the afternoon's gentle symphony of settling wood and rustling silk, while the parasol project continued its patient progression toward completion according to the ancient Japanese principles that valued thoughtful process as much as excellent results. And so our Japanese afternoon deepens into the gentle rhythm of contemplation and creation, where tea ceremony wisdom guides artistic decisions and patient testing reveals the harmony between bold innovation and timeless tradition. Part 3. The sample creation had begun with the sort of systematic methodology that characterized Japanese craftsmanship at its finest, each test combination carefully planned to reveal specific information about color relationships and pattern interactions that would inform the final design decisions. Master Takeshi worked with the larger pieces of silk, creating samples that demonstrated how the vibrant pink would appear when used as the primary color, while Yuki focused on smaller test combinations that explored the pink's potential as an accent color integrated with more traditional palettes. The workshop had settled into the productive quiet that marked periods of concentrated creative work, broken only by the soft sounds of cutting silk, the gentle rustle of fabric being arranged and rearranged, and the occasional quiet consultation about technical aspects of the testing process. This was the sort of peaceful, focused atmosphere that allowed both craftsmen to engage fully with the subtle visual relationships that would determine the success or failure of their experimental approaches. But it was precisely during this harmonious collaboration that the afternoon's first genuine disagreement emerged, as Yuki completed a sample that combined the vibrant pink with a traditional cherry blossom pattern in ways that pushed the boundaries of conventional design more boldly than either craftsman had initially anticipated. "Grandfather," Yuki said carefully, holding up her completed sample with obvious pride but also apparent awareness that her creation might prove controversial, "I believe this combination demonstrates the potential for integrating vibrant colors with traditional motifs in ways that enhance rather than diminish the pattern's classical beauty." Master Takeshi examined the sample with the sort of careful attention that he brought to all significant artistic decisions, studying how the bold pink silk interacted with the delicate cherry blossom design under the workshop's natural lighting. The combination was undeniably striking. The vibrant color gave new life to the familiar pattern while the traditional motifs provided structure that prevented the pink from appearing merely garish. However, the overall effect was considerably more dramatic than anything that conventional parasol design would typically accommodate, creating exactly the sort of aesthetic challenge that required careful consideration of both artistic merit and social appropriateness. The technical execution is excellent, Master Takeshi acknowledged diplomatically, and the color integration shows sophisticated understanding of how bold elements can be balanced with traditional design principles. However, I have concerns about whether such pronounced visual impact aligns with the social context in which these parasols will be used. This sort of gentle but firm critique was typical of Japanese master-student interactions, where artistic education required honest evaluation of work that balanced encouragement for creative exploration with realistic assessment of practical limitations. The goal was to cultivate artistic judgment rather than simply technical skill. Yuki had expected this response, but her expression suggested that she was prepared to defend her design choices with arguments based on artistic principle rather than merely personal preference. "But grandfather," she replied with respectful persistence, "consider how the merchant family's daughter might feel carrying a parasol that announces her presence with confidence rather than one that allows her to disappear into conventional expectations." This sort of philosophical challenge to established design principles was exactly what Master Takeshi both appreciated and found challenging about working with talented students who possessed independent artistic vision. Yuki's argument demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the relationship between objects and their users' psychological needs, even if her conclusions differed from traditional approaches. The question, Master Takeshi responded thoughtfully, is whether confident self-expression serves the client's long-term interests, or whether it might create social complications that outweigh the psychological benefits of bold aesthetic choices. This sort of complex analysis of design implications was fundamental to Japanese craftsmanship, where successful objects had to navigate not just artistic considerations but the intricate social dynamics that governed daily life in a highly structured society. The conversation was moving beyond simple color preferences into deeper questions about the role of craftsmen in either supporting or challenging social conventions. The afternoon light had begun to take on the warmer, more golden quality that characterized the transition toward evening, creating subtle changes in how the silk samples appeared under different illumination conditions. The shifting light reminded both craftsmen that parasol colors had to remain attractive and appropriate throughout the varying conditions of actual use. Yuki arranged her controversial sample alongside the more conservative alternatives they had created, studying how the different approaches appeared when viewed as part of a comprehensive collection rather than isolated individual pieces. Perhaps, she suggested diplomatically, the vibrant approach could serve as one option among several, allowing the client to choose the level of visual impact that aligns with her personal preferences and social circumstances. This sort of creative compromise was exactly what Master Takeshi hoped to see from advanced students, the ability to balance artistic vision with practical constraints while finding solutions that honored multiple perspectives rather than simply insisting on single approaches. However, the afternoon's design exploration was about to encounter an unexpected complication in the form of Mrs. Tanaka, the merchant family's representative, who arrived for her scheduled consultation precisely as the debate about color boldness was reaching its most philosophical heights. Mrs. Tanaka was a woman whose appearance suggested both aesthetic sophistication and strong opinions about proper design choices, representing exactly the sort of client whose approval was essential for commercial success while also potentially challenging for craftsmen whose artistic vision might not align perfectly with conventional expectations. Master Takeshi, Mrs. Tanaka announced with the sort of polite formality that indicated she was prepared to engage in serious design discussions, "I have come to review the progress on my granddaughter's parasol collection and to provide guidance about any design decisions that require family input." This sort of client consultation was a regular feature of custom parasol work, requiring craftsmen to present their developing ideas in ways that demonstrated both technical competence and sensitivity to customer preferences. The timing of Mrs. Tanaka's arrival, just as the color controversy was reaching its peak, created exactly the sort of situation that tested diplomatic skills as much as artistic judgment. Master Takeshi arranged the various samples they had created in a presentation format that would allow systematic evaluation, while Yuki prepared herself for the sort of client interaction that was an essential part of learning the business aspects of artistic craftsmanship. We have been exploring various approaches to color selection, Master Takeshi explained diplomatically, ranging from traditional palettes to more contemporary interpretations that might appeal to younger users while maintaining appropriate social propriety. This sort of careful introduction to potentially controversial design options was typical of experienced craftsmen's approach to client consultation, establishing the framework for discussion while avoiding immediate confrontation about specific choices that might prove problematic. Mrs. Tanaka examined the samples with the sort of systematic attention that indicated genuine expertise in evaluating textile quality and design appropriateness. Her expression remained carefully neutral as she studied the various combinations, though her extended attention to the more vibrant examples suggested either particular interest or specific concern about their boldness. "This pink," she said finally, holding up Yuki's controversial sample with an expression that was difficult to interpret, "is certainly distinctive. I'm curious about the reasoning behind such a pronounced color choice for a young woman's parasol." The way Mrs. Tanaka emphasized the word distinctive suggested that she was employing the sort of diplomatic language that allowed for polite discussion of potentially objectionable artistic decisions without immediately creating confrontational situations. Yuki looked to her grandfather for guidance about how to respond to this delicate inquiry, understanding that her answer would influence not only the current project but potentially her future relationship with important clients. The vibrant pink represents an exploration of how traditional patterns can be enhanced through contemporary color choices, Master Takeshi explained carefully, though we naturally defer to family preferences regarding what approaches best serve the young lady's needs and social circumstances. This sort of diplomatically neutral response was designed to acknowledge the client's concerns while maintaining space for artistic discussion that might lead to acceptable compromises rather than simple rejection of innovative approaches. Mrs. Tanaka continued her examination of the samples, comparing the bold pink combinations with the more conservative alternatives while apparently conducting some sort of internal evaluation process that would determine her family's position on the design controversy. "My granddaughter," she said thoughtfully, "has expressed interest in parasols that reflect her personality rather than simply conforming to conventional expectations. However, we must also consider the opinions of other family members who maintain more traditional views about appropriate aesthetic choices for young women." This revelation of internal family dynamics added another layer of complexity to the design decision process, as the parasols would need to satisfy multiple generations with potentially different aesthetic preferences and social philosophies. The afternoon had developed into exactly the sort of challenging artistic situation that tested every aspect of craftsman-client relationships: technical skill, aesthetic judgment, diplomatic sensitivity, and the ability to find creative solutions that honored competing demands while maintaining the integrity of the finished work. As Mrs. Tanaka continued her careful evaluation of the various design options, both Master Takeshi and Yuki prepared for the sort of negotiated design process that would determine whether their afternoon's experimental work would contribute to successful parasol creation or would need to be reconsidered in favor of approaches that better served the complex social dynamics of their distinguished clients. And so our Japanese afternoon deepens into the delicate choreography of art and diplomacy, where bold creative vision meets family expectations and the ancient craft of parasol making requires skills that extend far beyond silk and bamboo. Part 4 Final. The late afternoon light had reached that perfect golden quality that seemed designed specifically for the sort of delicate negotiations that determined whether artistic innovation would find acceptance within the careful boundaries of social propriety, casting the workshop in the kind of warm illumination that made even the most challenging conversations feel touched with possibility rather than burdened with inevitable disappointment. Mrs. Tanaka continued her methodical examination of the various samples, her expression revealing the sort of thoughtful consideration that indicated she was weighing multiple factors: aesthetic appeal, family harmony, social appropriateness, and perhaps most importantly, her granddaughter's happiness, in reaching what would certainly be a diplomatically complex decision. Master Takeshi had arranged the samples in a sequence that demonstrated the full range of possibilities, from the most traditional approaches through various intermediate compromises to Yuki's boldly innovative pink combination, creating a visual narrative that showed how artistic vision could evolve while maintaining connection to established principles. This sort of comprehensive presentation was designed to help clients understand not just individual choices but the reasoning behind different approaches and the ways that various options might serve different purposes. Perhaps, Mrs. Tanaka said thoughtfully, setting down Yuki's controversial sample while maintaining the sort of diplomatic tone that suggested she was searching for solutions rather than simply rejecting possibilities, we might consider creating a collection that offers my granddaughter choices appropriate to different social contexts. A young woman's parasol needs may vary considerably depending on whether she is attending formal family gatherings or enjoying more casual social activities. This suggestion represented exactly the sort of sophisticated client thinking that experienced craftsmen hoped to encounter, understanding that complex social situations required nuanced solutions rather than single approaches that attempted to serve all purposes simultaneously. Mrs. Tanaka's proposal opened possibilities for creative compromise that could honor both artistic innovation and family traditions. Yuki felt a surge of cautious optimism at this response, recognizing that Mrs. Tanaka was not simply dismissing the bold design but was instead seeking ways to incorporate innovative elements within a framework that addressed family concerns about social appropriateness. This was the sort of collaborative problem-solving that made custom craftsmanship both challenging and deeply satisfying. An excellent approach, Master Takeshi agreed with obvious relief, understanding that Mrs. Tanaka's suggestion provided a pathway for implementing their afternoon's experimental work without creating the sort of family controversy that could damage both current relationships and future business prospects. We could create parasols that range from elegantly traditional for formal occasions to more expressive designs for informal settings where creative color choices would be appreciated rather than questioned. This sort of comprehensive solution demonstrated the value of patient consultation and collaborative design thinking, where apparent conflicts between different preferences could be resolved through approaches that honored multiple perspectives rather than forcing choices between competing alternatives. The workshop seemed to exhale with collective relief as the tension around the pink controversy began to dissolve into productive planning for a collection that would serve the young woman's various social needs while maintaining family harmony. The afternoon's philosophical discussions about art, tradition, and social expression had led to exactly the sort of practical wisdom that characterized successful Japanese craftsmanship. Mrs. Tanaka picked up the controversial pink sample once more, examining it with renewed attention now that it was no longer being evaluated as a single solution but as one element in a comprehensive approach to parasol design. This vibrant combination could indeed serve well for garden parties or informal visits with young friends, she observed approvingly, where such confident color choices would demonstrate taste and personality rather than social inappropriateness. This sort of contextual acceptance was exactly what Yuki had hoped to achieve through her experimental work, not universal approval for bold choices, but recognition that different situations called for different aesthetic approaches and that skilled craftsmen should be able to provide options that served the full range of their clients' social needs. The afternoon had progressed to that stage where decisions made during intense consultation needed to be translated into practical work plans that would guide the actual construction of the parasol collection. Master Takeshi began organizing the approved samples according to the construction sequence that would most efficiently utilize their materials and workshop time while ensuring that each parasol received appropriate attention to detail. The traditional designs will establish the foundation of the collection, he explained to both Mrs. Tanaka and Yuki, providing the sort of elegant reliability that formal occasions require. The intermediate approaches will offer subtle innovation that demonstrates artistic sophistication without challenging social expectations, while the bolder designs will serve situations where creative expression is welcomed and appreciated. This systematic approach to collection development represented the sort of comprehensive craftsmanship that distinguished master artisans from simple technicians, understanding not just how to create individual objects but how to design coordinated sets that served complex social and aesthetic functions. Yuki began gathering the materials that would be needed for the approved designs, feeling the satisfaction that came from seeing her experimental work validated and incorporated into actual commissions rather than simply serving as learning exercises. The afternoon's philosophical discussions about color and tradition had led to practical applications that would enhance a young woman's social experience while also advancing the art of parasol design. The workshop's peaceful atmosphere had been restored, with the sort of harmonious collaboration that characterized successful artistic enterprises where all participants felt that their contributions were valued and their concerns were addressed. Mrs. Tanaka expressed her satisfaction with the design solutions while Master Takeshi and Yuki began the mental transition from consultation to active construction. As the golden afternoon light continued its slow progression toward evening, the tea kettle began its gentle whisper once again, marking the approach of the day's second tea ceremony, a time for reflection on the afternoon's accomplishments and preparation for the evening work that would begin transforming approved designs into actual parasols. Before we conclude today's consultation, Mrs. Tanaka said with the sort of formal politeness that indicated she had additional thoughts to share, "I should mention that my granddaughter will be particularly pleased to learn that her parasol collection will include options for expressing her personality while also honoring family traditions." This sort of thoughtful balance between innovation and propriety is exactly what we hope to find when we chose to commission your workshop. This expression of client satisfaction represented the highest achievement that custom craftsmen could attain, not just meeting stated requirements but understanding and addressing the unstated needs that made commissioned objects truly successful in their intended contexts. The afternoon's challenging negotiations had produced exactly the sort of comprehensive solution that built long-term relationships with distinguished families. Master Takeshi bowed appropriately at this praise, while Yuki felt the deep satisfaction that came from contributing meaningfully to work that would enhance someone else's life while also advancing her own artistic education. The parasol collection would serve as a lasting testament to the afternoon's successful collaboration between artistic vision and social wisdom. As Mrs. Tanaka prepared to depart with detailed plans for the parasol collection and firm completion dates that would ensure timely delivery, the workshop settled into the peaceful rhythm that marked successful conclusions to challenging artistic consultations. The approved designs waited for construction, the materials were selected and ready, and both master and student felt the quiet confidence that came from work well planned and diplomatically executed. The late afternoon had achieved exactly the sort of resolution that characterized the finest Japanese craftsmanship. Apparent conflicts transformed into creative opportunities, individual preferences balanced within broader social considerations, and innovative artistic vision integrated with traditional wisdom through patient consultation and collaborative problem-solving. As the tea kettle song grew more insistent and the workshop's shadows lengthened in the golden light, Master Takeshi and Yuki prepared for their evening tea ceremony with the satisfaction of having navigated successfully through the sort of complex artistic and social challenges that separated genuine masters from merely competent technicians. The parasol collection would proceed according to plans that honored both artistic innovation and family harmony, while the afternoon's discussions would inform future projects with the wisdom gained through successful resolution of apparently incompatible requirements. It was exactly the sort of day that made the patient pursuit of traditional craftsmanship feel like participation in something larger and more meaningful than simple object creation. The workshop waited in peaceful readiness for tomorrow's work, with tools arranged and materials prepared according to the afternoon's decisions, while the soft sounds of tea preparation reminded master and student that even the most challenging artistic problems could find elegant solutions through patient attention to both technical excellence and human understanding. In the gentle golden light of late afternoon, surrounded by the quiet tools of their ancient craft and the approved designs that would soon become beautiful parasols, both craftsmen felt the deep satisfaction that came from work that served not just practical needs but the eternal human desire for objects that enhanced daily life through the perfect marriage of function and beauty. And so our Japanese afternoon reaches its harmonious conclusion, with bold innovation finding its proper place within respectful tradition, while the eternal rhythm of tea and craftsmanship continues its ancient dance in the golden light of a Kyoto workshop where wisdom flows as gently as silk through patient hands. And every parasol carries forward the accumulated understanding of generations who knew that true art lies not in choosing between old and new, but in weaving them together with such skill that the seam becomes invisible. The end.